Sounds all highly theoretical. I'll give you some examples of it all. So, as I said, part one is the promise. So I want everyone to think about what their business delivers. Even if you don't worry too much about being perfect on it, just think about like what's the outcome a customer gets from getting clear on, from interacting or becoming a customer of your business. What's the outcome they get? I'll give you like 30 seconds to think about that. Just write down, don't think about it too much. It'll just be important for you guys to have something as we work through this process. And by the way, guys, there's always extenuating circumstances. Like this is a model I've found that applies to most businesses, but there's gonna be some businesses that if you're a dentist, well, that you help people have like cleaner teeth and like oral hygiene and that kind of thing, but it's not like, oh, I help you, go 8 shades whiter in 47 days or something. So it does depend on the business type, if that makes sense. If anyone's got a question, feel free to sing out as well. Everyone good? Good? All right. So I'll give you some examples, guys, of promises. Actually, I probably should have done that before we did that exercise, but I'll give you some examples. As I said, it's what do you help your clients achieve? It's the primary reason you're in business. And, most of these things are simpler than you think. Most people buy things for one of 3 reasons: to make or save money, to make or save time, to look after the health of themselves and their family. And then whenever I say that, someone goes, so why do people buy a Ferrari? I don't know. So probably to look after their health. So here's some examples, guys. And I'm going to show you a video that illustrates this concept really, really, really well. It's by this men's tailor company. Their promise is the best fitting shirt you've ever worn. I developed this whole IP, and then I was on YouTube. I was on Instagram randomly on a Sunday night in bed, and I saw this ad, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, it's a really good example of fitting these 3 things in. So, a business coach's promise could be make 100 grand in 90 days. Financial planner could be 3 properties in 3 years. A health coach, lose 5 kilos in 30 days. Real estate, sell your home in 120 days. A marketing agency could be we help you generate 1,000 leads a month. Obviously, again, that's an example where it would vary from client to client, but it's just an example of it. There's a gym, I think they're just in Victoria. They're called Ultimate You, and they have this promise, lose 9 kilos in 6 weeks. And it's like a challenge. This is how they get customers in. When I heard about this, I was like, this is crazy. They do a challenge. It's like our 9 in 6 challenge. I think the website's like 9in6.com, but if you sign up, you pay to do it, and if you achieve the result, you get your money back, and then obviously they sell you to a membership. But it's a really awesome example of like, wow, that's an irresistible offer. Like, if I do it, it's not going to cost me anything, and I'm going to get the benefit I want. Really good marketing. So does everyone understand this idea of promise? Anyone got any questions? Yep. Yep. Yep.
Is that the kind of thing you want? You want to get it distilled down to something with numbers in it? It's very black and white, deliverable.
It just depends on, to answer your question, ideally yes, but like I said, there's always extenuating circumstances. Like, it totally depends on what your business is. You can see here, like, best fitting shirt you've worn, right? Say, take that for example. You can't prove that. Like, no one can prove it. It's just like, yeah, we'll give you the best fitting shirt you've ever worn, and I'll explain why they make that claim. And when you see why, with their mechanism, you think like, oh, it makes sense, but there's no way to prove it. So it depends what you do. If you sell information, then generally, yeah, you can. If you sell information to a very targeted client, but there's definitely cases where it's not that clear. I love time frames. You're right, they all mainly have time frames on them. But if it doesn't fit, you wouldn't put it on there, you know what I mean? They've got to be linked, sell your home in 120 days. The offer might be, I don't know, we sell your home for like a 5 grand flat fee. They're not really related, but they kind of are. It's more so like, what if, someone employs a real estate agent, what do they want to do? They want to sell their home and they want to get the best price for it. That's what they want. So that's kind of what you deliver. But then that's like the thing, that's kind of like your USP in a lot of ways. That's like the marketing that hooks them in. It also... Yeah, sure. So there's different ways you can go about it. So you might have a promise around customer service. You might have a promise around like a warranty, a promise around like a service period, or a time frame to complete it, or a time frame to rock up to a job. Like a good example is, although it's slightly different, it's not service-based, Domino's Pizza. Their thing was like piping hot pizza in 30 minutes or less. You know what I mean? So you probably have to be creative in your industry just because it is a bit different. And that's why it doesn't apply to like every single thing in like a one-to-one fit, if that makes sense. Yep. You want to just be able to explain it simply. If it's too long, I would say that it's probably overcomplicated. In between sessions, guys, if you've got questions, you can ask me like specific stuff. But we'll keep moving for now. So, as I said, the second part of this is the mechanism. And actually what I might do is I want to play this video for you guys that I was just talking about before I explain this any further, because how do I... Have I got sound here, Steve? Oh, okay, yep, sure. All right, yeah, well, it's not super important, but we'll... where are we? So yeah, as I said, guys, the second part of this is the mechanism. It's like once you get clear on your promise, what is the thing that you use to actually deliver it? And again, this is largely if you sell information consulting, if you're accounting, financial services, real estate, gym, whatever, you can largely come up with something that is like just your IP or your framework. You know, every business has a process to deliver the outcome. So you can say to people like, yeah, we use our, XZ method, which is a 4-part thing. It involves this, 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 and this. And that's how we're able to get these results. And once you get clear on this mechanism, like let's say you're a financial planner and you develop I've worked with this guy and he had already got one, but he called his 4-step system for helping people retire with more money the SHIELD system. Once you create a mechanism, in all of your content, you want to be referring to this. If you do a case study, you want to be talking about how it was possible because of this, not because of you, right? Because when people believe they need the mechanism, then they have to buy from you. But if you convince them, I helped them get the results because I showed them how to do X, Y, Z, they think that someone else can show them how to do that. But when they're like, nah, they got the result because of this system I've created, they have to go get the system, and you're the person who has the system. So some examples, guys. The business coach I'm going to give you guys a case study of, an example of. Some of you have probably seen his ads, might know him. I went and interviewed this guy, a really incredible entrepreneur in Melbourne, and we spoke for like 2.5 hours. And then I sent the interview to my mate Ricky. I'm like, hey mate, have a listen to this. It's like the content's phenomenal, but let me know what you think. This guy built like all these different businesses. I said, what do you think is like the commonality in the process he has for building businesses? And my mate was like, he reverse engineers everything. Like he just gets really clear on the numbers, and he has like a 4-step process where he gets really clear, develops his marketing strategy, takes massive action, da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, that's cool, but reverse engineering's pretty lame. Like everyone talks about it, there's nothing new and exciting about it. And so I was literally sitting in my office in Melbourne one day and I was like, reverse engineering. I'm like, when I think of engineering, what do I think of? Formula One. I'm like, who's a notable Formula One driver? And I just called his thing the Schumacher method, right? And I'm going to show you the ad we ran on Facebook. Wrote this long story about the guy, talked about how he developed this Schumacher method, and like, it just went crazy. Everyone was commenting, like, what's the method? Would it work for a bakery? Would it work for a butcher? Like, everyone was buying into this thing. But in reality, this dude was just on another level. Like, the system worked, but like, crazy guy. Like I said, my financial planner had the SHIELD system. And the reason I wanted to show you this video, guys, is because it's about this tailor, and their mechanism is what they call zip fit. So they make button-up shirts for men, but instead of buttoning, there's a zipper, like the shirt has a fly, and that's the thing. That's the mechanism that delivers the promise of the best-fitting shirt you've ever worn. And when you see the video, you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Even though no one's ever worn one, you just assume it's right because they present it in a really good way. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Because the mechanism is so different, every button-up shirt has buttons, and now someone's pulling out a zipper. When they say, we give you the best fitting shirt ever, in your head you're like, oh, that makes sense. You know what I mean? You'll see when I show you this video. And again, if you're a personal trainer, health coach, someone like that, Like my trainer called his thing the muscle pyramid system. Has anyone here heard of the exercise form P90X? They came up with this. It's like a type of home-based exercise. Huge company, and a company named Beachbody created this method of exercise. And in their marketing, you should go research it. They developed this thing called muscle confusion, where when you train, it's like they were saying, if you keep training with the same program, after like 6 weeks, you'll plateau. And so we've developed P90X, which uses muscle confusion, which is absolute rubbish. It's not even a real thing, to like change up your workout so that you never plateau, so you keep like making gains and getting better results. And they did, like, I've read about it, like $26 billion in sales. It's crazy. I don't know what it was. It wasn't that much, but it just shows the power of having a mechanism that people can buy into. And again, guys, are these new ideas to people, this way of thinking? Like, or have people heard of these kind of things? It'll probably take you a bit of time to get your head around it. I can share some resources, like some books that I would read where guys I've learned from talk about it. It's really powerful stuff. And then, as I mentioned earlier, guys, part 3 is the story. All right? Oh, actually, hang on, we've skipped that. Does everyone want to have some time to think about what their mechanism could be? I know that's like a pretty big thing to just jump into, but even if you think in your business, like, what's the process we go through to help our clients get results? Even just to have some awareness of it. This is something that takes a lot longer to come up with than a promise. But if you start to think of, like, A, what differentiates us from our competitors, and B, what process do we take people through to get results? Like, what is it about the way I approach what I do, or what you approach what you do, that's different to everyone else? Because when it comes to marketing and writing copy and running ads, I believe my approach is different to other people. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better, it's just different. But that thing that's different is going to appeal to some people. So take like a minute or two just to think about, just even jot down your process, 3 or 4 steps, if that makes sense. Or it doesn't have to be 3 or 4, it can be heaps. But just start to think about what that mechanism would be in your marketing that can deliver the promise that you offer to your clients. All right, guys, how'd everyone go with that? Has anyone got any questions based on that? All right, listen up, guys. We'll keep moving. If anyone's got any questions on that sort of thing, just come and ask me in one of the breaks. So as I was saying earlier, story is a really, really important part of all of this stuff. Because up until now, you've got your promise and you're more clear on what you do and people understand what you do. I think a big part of getting clear on your promise is if you don't understand it and you can't communicate it clearly, how the hell can anyone else who's meant to work with you understand it? You know, and it's a lot easier to do other people's marketing than it is to do your own stuff. I'm acutely aware of that. And one of the things that comes down to is you try and filter yourself. You're like trying to come up with a promise for your marketing, but you're coming from this place of like, oh, what would my mum think if she saw this knowing that I created it? Whereas someone else is like, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm just telling you what's the best option for you. So keep that in mind, but you've got your promise and then you've started to work on your mechanism and develop this framework or this idea that you have like a unique IP or service offering or framework that can help people get results. And then the problem is, like I said, that mechanism is largely something you've created. But even if it's not something you've created, even if it's like the zipper I was talking about, which again I'll show you the video on, you're going to find that people are still curious. Because like say the zipper, if you're just like, hey, we make shirts with zippers, it's like, oh, that's interesting. But when you see the story behind how they came up with it, you're like so bought into it. And so story really helps to, again, relate to people, build empathy and rapport and that know, like, and trust factor, but then also make you become someone that other people want to buy from. And in the instance of selling services or information or that sort of thing, you end up providing credibility to your mechanism that delivers your promise. Does that make sense? Cool. So, I just talked about why story. I've developed this story writing process. Again, just chucked another trademark in there for something that's not trademarked. It's what I call the fairy tale story writing process. I'm not going to talk about this in too much detail right now because I write long ads. I'll talk a little bit about it in the next session if we have time. And I can sort of break down. I'm going to provide some examples of these ads for you so that you can see exactly how this process works. I'm just going to briefly talk about it now. But I write these long ads, right? And I've got some links to some so you can go home and study them and all of that sort of jazz. But I'll have a big headline, right? The key to creating a content piece that gets a lot of engagement on Facebook is this. You need to cast a really wide net in your headline. It's what I call the headline chasm. Most people who have a problem they want to solve or a result they want to get don't want to go as far as you've gone, right? What I mean by that is, if I was to say, teach some people how to do the whole digital nomad marketing lifestyle thing that I've kind of lived for the last few years, you know, most people don't want to buy an existing business, go through a ton of failure, and then, you know, reach a point where they're making, you know, a significant amount of money and having this insane lifestyle. Not that I have that. Most people, though, their problems are smaller than yours, and where they want to get to is not as high as where you've gotten to, right? It's the same in the financial world. So you cast this wide net, and I'll show you some examples of it, but what I mean is I wrote a headline for a property guy, and the headline was how an expelled high school dropout making $9 an hour retired at 26 with 12 properties and a $3.5 million property portfolio. And you see that and you're like, well, I'm not an expelled high school dropout making $9 an hour, and I don't really necessarily desire or care to retire at 26 with 12 properties. I just want to buy 2 or 3, make some income and live a good life. But because he's done this and you're trying to do that, all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, this guy's probably someone who can help me because he's gone either sides of where I'm going. All this stuff happens at a subconscious level, but that, what I call chasm, is the thing that kind of draws people in. So you'll have a headline like that, then you'll introduce yourself. Hey, I'm James Hepburn, I'm a copywriter, digital marketer, and entrepreneur. And I'm going to tell you more about my story. But before I do, you then want to have what I call a transition. So you'll say something like, before I do, you're probably reading the headline like skeptical because there's, you know, a lot of this sort of stuff on the internet at the moment, which is why I want to share my story with you so you can better understand where I come from. And then I've got this method where I'll tell 2 stories in the middle of the ad. This is why it's so long. The first story will typically be more geographical, be more about like your upbringing and how you kind of reached a point where you realized that you needed to change if you wanted to have the life you wanted to live. And the second story will be a lot more related to the topic itself. And, you know, the moral of that second story will be that you discovered this like mechanism or this way of getting the result that your prospect wants. Whether it's a stock market trading system, a way to invest in property, a way to generate leads, a way to grow a business, a way to help your clients, that are, you know, if you're an accountant, financial planner, all of these kind of things. So again, this is pretty complicated, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but you tell these stories all with the goal of explaining how you developed your mechanism, right? Take a photo of that if you want. I'll post it in the group. If you go to these bit.ly links, you can read these ads that I've written that go through that process. This is the one here in the middle that has the whole expelled high school dropout thing. And that's only the top half of the ads, but you can even see, I mean, if you can see from where you're sitting. Big headline, the secret strategy a 2-time self-made real estate entrepreneur discovered after going completely bankrupt in the 2008 housing crisis that skyrocketed him to financial freedom and the lifestyle of his dreams. That's a lot longer than I would write these days, but that's the kind of thing. $4 billion hedge fund manager and finance MBA reveals unique property investment blueprint he used to 2 to 3 times rental income and pay off his mortgages twice as fast. That dude like literally ran like the biggest like hedge fund in the US. A crazy guy that I met. But you go through and you'll see these processes, right? And because they're written in a certain way through that method that I just recently outlined, you end up with you can suck people in. And by the time they get to the end of that ad, they've spent 3, 4, 5 minutes reading about your whole life. They now know so much more about you. And you've kind of short-circuited the process of building trust with people. They're not necessarily going to buy from you because you've just started with it. But you've found a way to build rapport, build trust, tell your story. Because I just firmly believe, guys, everyone wants to connect with people, you know? And when someone wants to achieve an outcome and they read about someone who's done it, they immediately feel like an affinity with that person. Whenever you tell your story, the more you tell your story, the more you can achieve these outcomes. And the crazy thing is no one wants to tell their story. I get it all the time. Like, people are afraid to talk about where they are, who they are, what they come from, what they've been through. Oh, no one would care about me. And I'm like, you're right, they don't care about you, but they'll still read about it because it's an engaging story if you tell it properly. And then people will say to me, oh, I don't have a story. I wasn't an expelled high school dropout or, a 2-time self-made real estate entrepreneur or whatever. And it's like, sure, everyone has differing degrees of stories, but I guarantee you, I know this for a fact, every story can be told in a more compelling way. So trust me on this one, if you start telling your story, especially in more consumer-based markets, you can have a totally different outcome on the results. I'm going to show this video. I'll show it at the start of the next session. But essentially, yeah, Teddy Stratford is the company that makes these button-up shirts with the zipper. And the start of the video, I don't want to ruin it for you. It's really, really awesome. But I'll show you that one when we get the sound hooked up to my laptop. Really cool stuff. So guys, that's my system for marketing campaigns, and I've generated some pretty phenomenal results, especially in like the online coaching, consulting, information space, running campaigns like this, and I want to run you through a few of them, right? So I had this client, a guy named Travis Jones. He runs result-based training and a digital agency and a coaching business. He's one of the craziest dudes I've ever met. And I wrote some ads for him. And this is the guy I was talking about earlier. He's a business coach based out of Melbourne. His promise, he already developed this. He's like, I can show you how you can make an additional 100K in your business in the next 90 days if you do what I say. That was his thing. And we developed this Schumacher method like I talked about before. And then I told his story using that exact same process that we went through. And have I got a link to that ad? I'll get a link to that ad because I don't have the whole thing there. This is one of the best ads I reckon I've ever written, and a large part of it came from the fact that his story is so compelling. Like, he moved to Canada and he started this PT boot camp outside, and the guy had to get some leads, so he went to a shopping centre and he approached 400 people in a Saturday and a Sunday weekend and surveyed them and literally got leads manually. Like, the dude's a machine. And then he rang them all up and gave them 2 weeks of free PT, and then he signed up like 10 grand a month of clients. It's a crazy story, right? But he's used this system that we talked about here. Like, he said, hey, this is who I am. In the past 7 years, I've built result-based training to, it's like 14 million revenue and 21 locations. He's got a coaching business that does $1 million a year, an agency that does $1 million. And then we sort of talk about how, like, I realised something. The system to grow any business on this planet is exactly the same. Now, of course, there's a difference between a beauty salon and a plumbing business, but I can guarantee you this. When it comes to explosive business growth, they're identical. And for the first time ever, I'm going to reveal the secret system I've used over 100 times between my clients and I to grow a business to 7 figures and beyond. It's a system I call the Schumacher method. Now, I actually wish I had the end of this ad because there was just so much people commenting, curious about like how he'd made this work, what had he done, what businesses would it work for. And it really plays on this point that I'm making, that people will buy into your mechanism. People, if you can prove to someone that the mechanism is the thing that gets a result, they will be curious. If they want the result, they will want to know more about the mechanism. Yeah, absolutely. Because as the business changes, it totally depends on what the promise is. So it can be totally different. So, in the case of him, he was showing people, this is the landing page it went to. The system a PT from Perth used to build an 8-figure chain of gyms, 2 7-figure consulting businesses, and he's helped like 14 people, or helped his clients make over 73 million in sales. And then it kind of stepped out the method on this page. It was like the 4 steps, and he went through what the mechanism was and the call to action. No, yeah, you could use it on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think it suits more to these like social platforms. But I mean, you could send that out in an email and drive someone to a page where they talked about your story. I've mainly used it on Facebook just because that's where I've run all of my traffic to, And then the other way of looking at it is you can do video. You could split your story up over videos and retarget people based on how much of the video they watch to the next part of the story. But one point I do want to make on that is that everyone says to me every time I work with a new client, like, mate, no one's going to read. Our clients are different. They don't read long stories. I'm like, yeah, they do. They all do. Like, it's interesting. I would rather read a story than watch a 10-minute video. Who here watches a 10-minute video they randomly see? No one, because you don't know what's going to be in it. At least if someone writes a long story, you can scan it and decide if you want to read it. Yeah, I would script it out and tell it like that, because I think as much as I love video, you tend to ramble more when you don't script it out. Or if you talk on video, people ramble more. Whereas when you write, I like writing because I can literally edit every word out. So yeah, I would follow the same thing, just script it out though. Guys, I'll quickly run you through one last case study. A client with a similar thing in the business coaching space. Her promise was she'd show you how to make 35 grand in 35 days. And this was a bit earlier on, but she just called her mechanism the secret system, which is not that appealing, but the same principles apply. This chick is a Hay House author, which is a big personal development publishing company in the States. And we went through the same thing with her, you know. International Hay House author reveals her secret system to generate 35K in 35 days and build a 7-figure coaching business. Exactly the same thing. She had a ton of social proof, had been featured in a lot of places, but you can see here, we didn't even write the whole long story for this ad, just because I knew because she had so much proof, we really didn't need to go through it. It just crushed it. I never even wrote the story. It's a good friend of mine. But again, went through that similar process, and she made 10 sales into a 10K mastermind in a month. So there's no doubt you can get it to work, but it definitely does depend on your type of business of how to execute it. So guys, that's about it. I don't know how we're looking for time, but we're good, Steve?
Yeah, good. What about we give a big round of applause for James Hepburn?
How was the first session for everyone? We might just spend a quick moment and see what everyone's biggest takeaway was from that. Did everyone find that valuable and like a unique and different kind of approach to looking at the same thing? Awesome. Scream out some takeaways. Yeah. Yep. 100%. Yep. I want to show you what this stuff looks like, guys, when it's executed at a high level, because this video is probably the best example I can give, and you might get it on like a theoretical level, or you might understand what I'm saying, but it's totally different when you see it. I love Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you guys follow that guy. All right, this is the video. Has anyone heard of this company before, Teddy Stratford? I'd never heard of him until I saw this ad. All right, check this out. I'll play it a couple of times.
The address to an old Thai...
Hopefully it's loud enough.
A few years ago on a trip to Bangkok, I was driving through the city when I got pulled over. And as the policeman was approaching the car, I noticed that his shirt fit him really well. It may sound strange, but it was the best fitting button-down shirt I'd ever seen, and I instantly wanted to have one. I ended up asking the cop where he got his shirt, and he gave me the address to an old Thai tailor who'd been making police uniforms his whole life. And it was there that I discovered something revolutionary. The secret to the best fitting button-down shirt is that it doesn't button.
I'd never seen this before, but it's not just the Thai police. Police from all over the world have been putting zippers on uniforms for decades.
Hi, I'm Brian, founder of Teddy Stratford.
Traditionally, men's shirts have been too baggy, creating the illusion that even guys in great shape need to lose a few pounds. Then along came the fitted shirt, which was an improvement, but led to a different problem. Because they fit close to the body, they tend to pull and gap around the buttons, making it look like you're busting out of your shirt. Placing a zipper behind the placket completely eliminates this problem. The zipper evenly distributes any tension, so you can wear a closer fitting shirt with no gapping.
When I was back in New York, I teamed up with legendary custom shirt maker Carl Goldberg.
So the video goes for 3 minutes, but that's the main part. So does everyone see how that plays out? Yeah, there we go. So the crazy part is about this, and this will sound kind of weird, but if you study so much marketing and write so many ads like I have, after a while you just become totally numb to marketing claims. You've just seen so much stuff, like it just doesn't, you kind of get numb to reacting to it. It sounds weird, but it's like you just know all the strategies they're doing and you don't believe anything any marketer says. Don't ever believe anything they say, except for me. I always tell the truth. But I was sitting in bed at like 11:30 on a Sunday night, and like I started watching the ad, and I watched the whole thing before I realised I'd watch it. And I was like, man, that was so good. But then like my phone scrolled up on Instagram, and I lost the ad, and I spent like 4 days. I'm like Liam Neeson on Taken. If I see a good ad, like I'm going to find it. I've got a specific set of skills. And I found this ad, and I listened to a podcast with the founder, that Brian Davis guy, and it's actually a true story. And the whole thing actually happened, and then he went back there to refilm it, and he filmed all this stuff with the police, and but it's a great example of like this guy was just in Thailand, and especially in this social media era we live in, where people are, you know, they see so many ads every day. Like, you need to catch someone's attention, and like I said, I kind of ignore most ads, and I just started watching this thing of this guy in Thailand, and I was like, what the hell's going on here? And next thing I was like, man, that's the best idea for a shirt ever, and I was all pumped about it. The next day I was like, I don't ever buy clothes ever. Like, it was such good marketing. So I just want to show you guys again, just so now you've seen it, you can kind of understand what's going on.
A few years ago on a trip to Bangkok, I was driving through the city when I got pulled over. And as the policeman was approaching the car, I noticed that his shirt fit him really well. It may sound strange, but it was the best fitting button-down shirt I'd ever seen, and I instantly wanted to have one. I ended up asking the cop where he got his shirt, and he gave me the address to an old Thai tailor who'd been making police uniforms his whole life. And it was there that I discovered something revolutionary. The secret to the best fitting button-down shirt is that it doesn't button.
I'd never seen this before, but it's not just the Thai police. Police from all over the world have been putting zippers on uniforms for decades.
Hi, I'm Brian, founder of Teddy Stratford.
Traditionally, men's shirts have been too baggy, creating the illusion that even guys in great shape
I'll just
need to
pause
lose
it
a
there.
few pounds.
Does everyone have a better understanding now of how those three things play out? It's the best fitting button-down shirt I've ever worn. We use the zip fit system. That's what they call it, zip fit system. We use a zipper. And the story is how he discovered it. So the story is like, you know, obviously he could not have the story, and because it's a physical product, it would work fine. But the story provides so much intrigue. If the start of that ad on Instagram that I saw was just a guy with like a zip and a shirt doing this, you wouldn't even stop. Because he's like some dude on some dodgy like GoPro on the back of a motorbike in Thailand, you're kind of like intrigued by like, what the hell is this doing in my newsfeed? So it's not just something that applies to social media, but it's a good example of interruption-based marketing. And it's done so well that before you know it, you've watched 3 minutes of it.